As I said a few moments ago, at first blush, this scripture seems way out of sync. Way out of sync with the lectionary, the text, the movement, and the flow of the church year. That is, I would, or we probably expect to hear about Jesus' crucifixion in the springtime, during the season of Lent, as we move through that sad and more penitential season towards Maundy, Thursday, Good Friday, and eventually Easter. It's not a passage I would expect to hear at the end of the church season, one Sunday away from Advent and the initiation of that journey to Bethlehem. Usually on this Sunday, the passages are about the clouds parting and the sun shining and Christ descending and nations bowing and triumph and evil being conquered. But for some reason, this year it's different, as our selected text centers on what feels like not a moment of triumph and success and victory, but of defeat. What Luke gives us here, at least at face value, is one of Jesus' lowest moments: crucifixion, minutes away from death. There's nothing here that sounds victorious at all. Quite the contrary. All appears to be lost. If you're standing there and you're witnessing this, you must think it is done. Over. That's it. Crucifixion, not coronation, is the crown on Jesus' brow. Why, even the sign above his head mocks him. Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. If you are king, why can't you bring yourself down? And yet, in the midst of what feels like total despair, there is this very, very poignant, intimate conversation. You know, all this other stuff's going around, and yet in the midst of this, Luke paints this very poignant, intimate conversation involving these two thieves on either side of Jesus. One who joins in the mocking, participates in what's going on, kind of goes along with the crowd, and the other who jumps to Jesus' defense. Save yourself if you are the king. To which comes the other's response, leave him alone. We deserve what we're getting, but he is innocent. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. To which comes the redeeming reply, as though nothing else going on matters. Isn't that interesting? All this stuff swirling around, people laughing, mocking, everything. Nothing else matters. Jesus focuses on this individual and he says to me, remember, today you will be with me in paradise. He doesn't say kingdom. He says, today you will be with me in paradise. And that may be significant because paradise, as used here in the Greek, is not the same word as kingdom. So whether Luke kind of transposed or interposed something we don't know, or maybe it's very intentional, but there's a distinction there. And our conception of heaven may be a bit different than what we are talking about here. But what we do know is that Jesus offers in the midst of all this trial and tribulation, so a word of hope, an image of redemption, and a reclaiming of victory, while even in the midst of the clutches of defeat. Isn't that interesting? Even in the midst of a battle lost, there is a claiming of victory. Here, we're given the image of the phoenix, prepared to rise from the ashes. Luke is reminding us right here that life has the last word, not death, which means that this text, which seems so out of place, may be the most appropriate text for this day of any. Because what I submit to you is the hope that we need, the resurrection that we desire, and the salvation we seek does not occur beyond reality. Luke says the salvation and redemption we seek and we need happens dead center in our world today. Not a world removed from hurt or from pain or from anxiety or from loss or from all those things that are a part of our humanity, ridicule, betrayal. Not the kind of salvation that's removed from that, but directly in it, because, friends, that's where we live. You know, we'd like to have some superhero. We'd like to have somebody with a cape who flies in and only fears kryptonite and can lift us up and we will never have any problems and puts his bubble and the shield around us. But what we get is so much better. Because this story doesn't deny that each and every one of us here face real challenges. We face real challenges. Luke doesn't tell us that the believer will not have life-threatening illnesses, that they'll go away, or chronic diseases that plague you. What Luke says from this story, what we should take from it, is that even in our darkest hours and our deepest moments of despair, these things need not have the final word. That what is lost is never lost to God, and these things never have the final word over us. That God can bring from even the most hopeless, apparently hopeless of situations, touches of good and glimpses of victory. And friends, you know, I don't need to preach about this. If you look around you, you know these victories because they are sitting in the pews beside you. These are real stories of victory. You know these illustrations of triumph because you worship next to people who have accomplished them day in and day out every week, simply by getting up and being here, simply by looking at themselves in the mirror, by overcoming depression and anxiety or arthritis or heart disease. Those who have not let cancer or death or the diminishing of their physical abilities win, they go on. You know, they get frustrated, they get upset sometimes, they even cry, but they do not blame life, they do not blame others, they do not blame God. Because they see God not as failing them, but as a God who strengthens them to get up and continue each and every day. The irony is, most of us, as I say this, probably nod yes to this. Yet we paint faith as a placebo that should somehow keep these realities away from us. That somehow we don't have it right if we, don't have nirvana. I don't read that anywhere in the Scriptures. I don't see anyone of faith escaping the realities of living. God does not owe us an existence exempt from crosses, but what God gives us is the power of faith that's revealed in situations that are shadowed by crosses. There's a huge difference, and it's powerful. The Apostle Paul said this best when he wrote to believers in the early church who lived under the constant threat of persecution from those around us, these words of encouragement, saying, "Friends, this is why we never lose heart. How could we? Even though it might appear that our lives are falling apart on the outside, I tell you, God is bringing new life on the inside. Because not a day goes by that doesn't reveal God's unfolding grace. Amazing grace that saves someone like me." And so a resurrection occurs for people of faith as paradise appears. Paradise appears not as some flash in the sky, but strength in our hearts. Paradise comes not as a removal from, but as our claiming victory in the midst and the realities of life. You know, if you'll let me deviate for just a moment and then I'll come back, an old example of this is the last hymn we sing, Now Thank We All Our God. Bishop Renkert, the small town he had in Europe, he became a bishop 2 years before the 30 Years' War started, and then shortly thereafter the Black Plague. And in the midst of his pastoral ministry in the Black Plague, he was doing 40 to 60 funerals a day. 40 to 60 funerals a day, including his own family. And yet, in the midst of that, he still claims victory by writing a song that says, Now thank we all our God. Listen to the words as we sing it. It is a powerful affirmation of victory in what would appear to be defeat. Last Sunday, some of you may have seen it. I hope you did. If not, I'm going to encourage you to YouTube it. But last Sunday, the television program 60 Minutes told a wonderful story of victory in what would appear to be defeat about a group of people, not just in one of the poorest countries in the world, Paraguay, but in one of the poorest cities in the world, Catura. Catura is a village that crept up recently, popped up essentially, because the people found work. This town started because the large capital city hauled all of its garbage out here and dumped it in this location. And these people discovered that they could pick through the garbage and make a living. That's how they lived, by finding what other people threw away and trying to sell it and resell it. So the city itself is essentially built on the top of a landfill. Needless to say, the children here lived in great poverty and were very susceptible to getting involved, drugs, gangs, and all the things that follow poverty. Well, a few years ago, one of the garbage pickers, an untutored genius of the slum, got together with a local musician, and they figured out how to make musical instruments out of the garbage they were collecting. Look at the front of your worship bulletin. There was no money for real instruments, so they figured out how to make violins and cellos from oil drums, flutes from water pipes and spoons, guitars from crates and pie pans. If you look at that clarinet there, you'll see coins. They had a cello that had a hairbrush on the top of it. And if you YouTube it and listen to it, they sound pretty good. And the man who made the violins had never in his entire life ever seen or heard one. And yet they made these for these youth. And these youth they learned to play them. In fact, these things became their life, and they YouTubed it, and the rest is history because now they're on a world tour. They're on a world tour. You can watch it, and I encourage you to. I love this. It's called Land Philharmonic. YouTube it. Go watch it. It's a 3-minute part of your life you'll never regret. Land Philharmonic. These people discovered that there were no hopeless situations, just people who give up hope. That something really good could come from a very awful situation. And rather than saying, isn't that too bad, or nothing can be done here, these individuals brought new life. These people did not accept defeat. You see, they haven't eliminated all the hurt and poverty they came from. It hasn't gone away. Kids still suffer. Kids still struggle. But they did not let that define them or have the final word. They did not eradicate the injustices that allowed their home to be a place defined by other people's garbage. They produced something valuable from it. What they produce may not be perfect. It's certainly not a Stradivarius. It isn't heaven, but it just might be evidence of paradise. And that's a very good start. And that's something that no matter what any of us face, Christ makes that paradise, that hope, that ability to have victory in life available to us all. And no matter how you cut it, that's a great message with which to conclude the church year. But beyond that, that's a great message to carry with us every day of the year. May it be so. Amen. At this time, we will continue our worship through the offering of our gifts.